Okay, it says we're live.
We're live.
Now this, so everybody watching this, you obviously know what's going on. This is Cara Black, the author of this month's book, Murder in the Marais.
Bonjour.
This isn't a typical walk show out on the streets of Paris.
No.
We're on a hotel terrace. What do you think so far?
I love it because we have a view of Sacré-Cœur behind us.
If I can show that, I'll turn it around and show it on the way back. But one of the best things, and the reason we're talking with quiet voices, is because there's a lot of people around here, and we're gonna walk out and show you the view, and then sit down and have a chat. And I think someone's. If you jump in there, we'll come over in a second with the. And we've also got some readers here. So what we're gonna do, Cara, we'll show the view as people start tuning in, and you can stand on my right-hand side and tell us where you murder people around here.
Oh, very close by. So we're in the hotel terrace, and there's a Montmartre.
Can we jump over that maybe, or? Okay. So. Okay, here you go.
This is the Earful Tower. Below us is Montmartre Cemetery. And I have a scene in Murder in Montmartre just over there, just the other side near where Degas is buried.
Oh, wow.
So there's a murder and a shootout.
Because all those trees are the cemetery as well. And this bit here is the untreed version. I see people are tuning in. And we've got this amazing view over the entire city. And down here is Rue des Abbesses. So I just, for a bit of...
We're on top of Montmartre.
What a life we lead.
Yes, it's very nice.
This is great. So we're up on the top of Montmartre. I see people tuning in. This is Cara Black, author of The Murder in the Marais and 18 other books. New book coming out June 4th.
Exactly.
Murder in Bel Air.
Murder in Bel Air.
And what we're going to do is we're going to go sit down, have a coffee or espresso and talk about the book. So now it's your turn to put comments, questions, and Cara's here to answer them.
I am.
Have I been calling you Cara the whole time, or have I slipped into Aimee yet?
Sometimes you do, yeah.
Okay. All right, so one more look at the view. Because after all, I know a lot of people love Paris and love little tips. Hotel Terrace in Montmartre. Absolutely beautiful day. Are you ready to go talk about your book?
I definitely am.
Okay, I'll lead the way. So, just sort of keeping my voice down, but this is a really cool little terrace where even I only discovered it fairly recently. And we've managed to get this beautiful little corner to ourselves. So what we'll do... Hi guys, just a little hello from the live recording.
Hello, hello.
But I was thinking that we could sit there maybe.
Yes.
And Lena, if you could hold this.
I'll sit over here.
Yeah. Like that?
Mm-hmm.
So what we'll do... Does everything look good?
Yep.
Hi guys. Welcome to the first book club meeting on a terrace of a
hotel in Montmartre.
Yes.
Where there is a fable that during the war, when the Germans requisitioned this hotel, that as they were leaving in liberation, they had all these bricks of gold, and so they couldn't take them with them, so they buried them in the cave in the cellar here.
Where did you hear that?
I love that.
I don't know where I heard it. Maybe it's just mythology about this hotel, but they never found the gold, so I don't know.
I love it. Okay, so there's potentially gold in the basement of this building.
Yeah.
That you could potentially access by going through the cemetery just next door.
I like how you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's very good. It's very good.
So I can see. So what I've done for you guys at home is I set up the computer so that I can see us.
Oh yeah.
There we are, and I can see your comments coming through. Just to prove it, Aimee says hello. June says bonjour from Edmonton, Alberta. And Marais says, where are we in Montmartre? That means people are signing in as we're going. We're at the Terrace Hotel, Terrass, at the end of Rue des Abbesses.
Right across from the cemetery.
Exactly. So you guys should all come here too. But now we're going to get into books and talking about books. All you people watching at home, put your questions and we'll answer them. And we're going to be here for about half an hour. And the crowd that is gathered will talk as well after. But if you got something to really jump in with, feel free.
I'm going to wear my shades, okay?
That's
because
fine.
It's so bright.
I would have worn mine, but I left them somewhere in Paris, never to be seen again. Thank you very much.
You need something else? You okay?
Un autre verre. Tu penses qu'on en a besoin?
Juste un verre, c'est tout?
Oui,
C'est bon?
merci.
So we're live, as you can tell.
That's the beauty of this.
This espresso, who's the other one for?
What?
Oh, it's for you.
Show them what it looks like.
It's
That's
gorgeous.
pretty. Look at that, and the little Madeleine.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Financier, maybe, or maybe Madeleine.
Yeah.
So
Or
someone
maybe
that's,
financier. Yeah, you're right.
Someone who listens to this,
water?
yeah, one of them's for you, one of them's for me, one of them's for. You can have that one.
Yeah.
You can have that one,
And we have
and I'll just have an iced coffee. I think.
Nice coffee.
But so the idea is that of this book club, as it grows and we continue to do this kind of stuff, is that we sit here and we talk with the author, and you answer questions specifically about the book. Because in the podcast we talked a little bit about everything you've done, and in the videos that we've done, quite hot, isn't it?
Oh, yes, I'm going to sit back in the shade.
So
Okay.
let's talk specifically about Murder in the Marais, which I finished reading about 15 minutes ago. It was your first book from 19 years ago.
Oh, more.
More? When was it from? Oh yeah,
It was-
19 books.
Yeah, 19 books. It was published in 1999, so it's 20 years since this book came out, and it took me 3.5 years to write it. So it's, you know, I've had like a 25-year relationship with my detective.
That's
I
incredible.
never knew we'd get so intimate.
And you remind me straight away, I'm going to say, watching this at home, this is specifically about the book. There will be spoilers. If you're halfway through, things are going to get spoiled. That's enough of a warning, right?
Yep.
But in the video that we did the other day, that didn't hold us back, did it?
No.
So let's talk about the book specifically from like the writing process and the editing process. Took 3.5 years, you said. So let's go right back there.
Right.
As you're working on it and researching it and sort of getting it going, did you have any idea that you'd started something that would last so long?
No clue whatsoever. I had no idea I would write a series and get to come to Paris. And I'll try to be brief. I came to Paris in the 80s, 1984, and stayed with my friend, who took me to the Marais in 1984 when it was very dark and sooty. It's not, you know, as it is now. And we were on the Rue de Rosier. We come through this Place de Vosges as we did the other day.
Right.
In the Rue de Rosier, and we stopped, and she pointed to this window and said, "My mother lived here during the war, like second or third floor, an old kind of sooty, leaning 17th century building." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, she was 14 years old, came home from school in 1942, and the apartment was empty. And by the way, my friend's mother wore a yellow star, so you know that they were Jewish, and she didn't know what that meant. And the concierge, she went to the concierge said, "I don't know, maybe they'll come back later." They never did, and she kept going to school, staying at the apartment, and the concierge ended up feeding her because at 14 she had no ration coupons, no ID card. And I found out later in my research that the concierge's son was a policeman, and the French police rounded up the Jews, 1942, the famous Valdivet roundup, and her name was not on the list, but then they came back for her, and her son, the French policeman, told her not to come back from school that day. So they did, and they fed her for the whole war, which was huge because, you know, people were living on rations. So it was amazing, this quiet act of heroism. They never wanted any recognition. And I thought about that. I mean, it just never left me. So my father, when I got back to America, he's a great reader, and I told him the story, and he loves history, and he was like, "Wow, that's amazing." And you know, and we always talked about it because I thought, I grew up in California with food on my plate. I never had to worry. Fast forward 10 years, 1994, we came to France House Exchange one night in the Marais. And it was my husband and son. Now, he was little then, and we stayed off the Rue du Train and in a hotel, and I put him to bed when I could. He's taller than me now, and he's married. but I remember I went out, and I went to the Rue de Rosier, and I looked for this building. I thought I found it, I don't know, and I looked at that window, and I thought, now that I was a mother, how would that feel? What if my son was little, and this is 1942? What would I do for him to eat, for us to survive, to have a roof on, you know, over our head? And I thought, you know, well, I'd do anything, you know. And then I thought, well, now it's 50 years after the war. What if something I did came back to bite me 50 years later in current Paris at that time in the 90s? So again, I came back and I was talking to my father, and he said, "You're obsessed with that story. You need to write it down, and now you have another perspective as a mother." And I said, "I don't know how to tell this story." And he said, he handed me a book by P.D. James, An Unsuitable Job for a Woman, and he said, "Read this." I went, oh, I don't like mysteries. No, no, read this. And I did, and it was about Cordelia Gray, who took over a detective agency and solved crime, and he was, you know, spunky and vulnerable and feisty, and I was like, yes, this is my way into the story, to have a detective and investigating the crime, you know, an old crime. So anyway, that's a long answer, but that's why I wrote, when I sold the story to my publisher, Soho Press, they were really helpful to me, you know, as a beginning writer, and doing the timeline, and so helped me so much. And then when I turned it in, I was like, finally. And then they said, well, where is Aimee Leduc going next? And I said, what? They said, but with her dog and the man she's seeing, and you are writing a second book, aren't you? You're writing a series. And I lied and said, yeah, of course. So that's my answer.
That's a good answer.
Got me into my life of crime. Hi.
Hi.
We're, hello, what's your name?
Sally.
Sally, welcome. Sorry if you got
Thank you.
lost looking around.
Paris Metro.
Oh, goodness me. So we're just recording live as we speak. Okay. But the idea is that we talk to the people that are watching live, and I see the comments come through. I haven't read it yet, but I'm just going to read it straight out to you, and then we'll get back on with it. Amy says she has a question about writing about technology in the past. I was surprised by the ubiquity of cell phones and Renee's laptop in The Murder of the Marais. Also, how much could Amy access via the internet at the time? This is quite a long question. In fact, it's several. Do you find yourself limited by 1990s technology, or do you just pretend whatever Amy needed existed?
No, I started writing it in the 90s, so it was very much, Renee used to write, they used routers and all that, you know, and people did have laptops, they had cell phones. In fact, France was much more developed than America, you know. With
They were very quick with the Minitel and all that stuff like that. Yeah.
So I mean, they had, and that's their specialty, computer security, and very few people were doing it. So Renee was very much into that, and he's a computer geek. So yes, there are limits. They've always got to dial up, and you know, which I don't find a problem, because everything was there. It was before Google. People were paying in francs. I love that you could smoke in the cafes. When we read it now, when we think now, it's like another era, right? But it was all there. The technology just wasn't, Google hadn't bought it and made it part of Google. So I keep I have a neighbor in San Francisco who's French, and he was a programmer in the 90s here in France. So I run things by him. Would you have done that? And he goes, no, remember we didn't have this and stuff. But again, that's not the point of my story, but it's just to be current, which I really tried to do, you know. And I just have to go back and do some research.
Does it get trickier though? I mean, it must get trickier than it was when you wrote the first one.
Yeah, but it's about staying honest to that time. What's trickier is that people today they can't believe it. They ask questions. You know, before GPS was only the French military had it. Now we have it on our phones. So it's hard to go back when we didn't have it. So I think a lot of people reading it today will go, you know, wait a minute, pay in euros. No, it's francs. And yes, we wouldn't have done that. So there was no internet as we know it. It was different, but people were communicating in, do you remember, like groups, forums, and chat rooms, and so we had that kind of thing.
I remember when we first, like a year ago, when we did the podcast, and I said something like about setting it today instead, or we talked about that, and you said the euro isn't sexy.
It's not sexy, right?
What else do you think is not sexy about today's Paris compared to Aimee's?
That I can do city mapper. I was having lunch with Penelope from the Red Wheelbarrow bookstore and Trez Bakery, and then I was like, okay, I've got to get here. Oliver said, be 10 minutes early, and I'm city mapping it, and I'm this and that, and I'm like, boom, it was easy. I'm like an old map person, you know. I love to look at maps, and I love to go somewhere, and I love to get lost, because that, you know, and if I have a cell phone, I don't get lost as much, but I love to just use paper and hold books, and I still see people reading books on the metro a lot, you know. I mean,
so, you know, first I want to go back to the story of how we came to this place. Something that I think sums up you as a person very well is that, and me as well, it sums us both up pretty well, is I didn't have a place to host this event, and I was saying to Cara that we didn't know where we'd be doing it. Cara said, that's fine by me. You can tell me right before I need to be there. I like a mystery.
Yeah.
I like a surprise.
It's fun.
And me, who was really bad at planning things, so I didn't know where we'd be, you didn't know where we'd be, and and we ended up here. I love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Just give me enough time to get here, wherever I'll be. So. Yeah.
But let's go back. So before you'd written this book, so we're going to get into the book, and I'm going to read more questions. I see it's not. I see people are watching, but we're not watching. But the comments are coming through.
Okay.
But keep those questions coming through. A lot of bonjours coming.
Bonjour.
From all over, especially Australia and America. They must be up early in America. Okay, it's working again. But so before we get into the nitty gritty of the book, you're writing this first book. Had you been writing before at all?
Nope.
Okay, so this was an absolute new foray into fiction. How did you convince the publishers?
How did I convince the publisher? Well, I wrote the book and I sent them. And so what I did and publishing has changed, but in the 90s, my father said, no, my husband, he had owned a bookstore, and he said, you got this manuscript. I didn't have an agent. He said, go to the bookstore and see where your book would be on the shelf. Of course, it's unique, but where would it fit? And I started to look at the mysteries, and there was Soho Press did mysteries set in foreign countries, which they still do, and it's famous for that. And I went, yeah, right here, this one. So I queried them, and at the time they took unagented submissions, and so I said, would you be interested? And they asked to see a sample, and then I believe they said, will you send the book? And then I was thinking, then I never heard from them, and of course it's like, okay, it's over, but whatever. And then I got a phone call, and they said, the editor said, is your book still available, Cara? We're interested. And I went, of course it is. I'm so happy. I should have been a little more business-like.
What was the turning point then? What made them change that?
Well, they just read the whole thing.
Right.
Sometimes there was a small publisher, and everyone has to read it. Everyone has to agree and think they can love your book and sell your book too. It's not that. And a lot of people I've met who, over the years, when you're beginning to write, it's not that your book isn't great or wonderful, but it's that it has to find the right home, and everyone there has to love your book and promote it. So it's a good fit. So you may have a great book, but the fit is somewhere else.
Right. So the end of the book, I'm getting to the end, but sort of it's a roundabout question. We just finished reading it. So I see people are tuning in. Sadly, you just arrived. Lena and I've been reading it out loud to Lena. I've never done that before. It was kind of fun. But because we left it so late to finish the book, in those last sort of 50 pages, I was reading very quickly, which added a lot to the suspense.
Because the pace,
the
speeds up.
pace was getting so quick, and so was mine. And it was kind of like this impending doom on someone,
Oh, yeah.
I was hoping it wouldn't be me.
Were you surprised by the ending?
I'm still processing the ending.
Oh.
No, it was surprising. We're doing spoilers, so it's alright. If not, mute your.
Mute.
I got chills. I literally got chills. I think it was like the surprise of the ending and everything coming together, and knowing that I'd meet you as well. That like in 10 minutes up the road, and that we'd be doing this, and we hadn't sorted it out. Everything came together. I literally had chills all over my body, so I guess that's a good sign.
I think so. That's what you want, yeah.
Well, my question was going to be, there are so many characters in it, like a lot of characters. I mean, I don't know, maybe 20 people I named or more? Yeah, 30? I don't even know. A
Huge,
lot.
yeah.
How did you work that out in your head? Because a lot of books just have, like even in the book club that we've done, many fewer characters.
So I was a preschool teacher, right? And so I worked in butcher paper with the children to do murals. So I get a wall, and I put the butcher paper, white paper, and then I would just make a timeline of Monday, Aimee, and different colors. Like Aimee was doing this, Renee was doing that. Tuesday we have another character, or Hardwood, another day, another color, and then I'd make drawing lines when they connected, when they met, and a new character in a different color, because as a preschool teacher we did that all the time. So different colors, different timelines, and then I could see the whole, where this person came in.
Which is kind of like what a detective would do as well, I imagine.
I think so. You kind of put out like those evidence boards. You put everything up, a piece of evidence, a photograph, a sighting, just to get you, because you're looking at the whole picture. So at the end, when you're rewriting, as I did, I went back. I went, oh, Renee could have been here because he was there, or so that helps with making everything good. ending, Murder in the Marais, was the first time I wrote it was different. I had a different
Tell us
ending.
what the other ending was.
Well,
or is
in
that
the-
bad luck or something?
No, it's
Okay.
this book is 20 years old.
And you've written 19 altogether.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not bad luck.
So the original ending was that Hartmut was, not Hartmut, that the minister, she would kill the minister on top. She would push him, let him die
Down
from
the skylight.
Down the skylight.
Right.
Yeah.
Kazoo.
Kazo,
Yeah.
because she's reading, you know, his the makeup is coming off his
That's
birthmark
right.
and everything. So I was going to have her, you know, let go. And then a friend said, well, think about it. I mean, have her show the better heart, you know, even though he's a murderer. Have her show that and then to bring him to justice. And of course he fell, which was his justice. He deserved that. But I thought that was very interesting. At the end, you're going to reach for them. And then it would be worse justice for him to be taken into court and blamed for everything. But he got the easy way out, actually.
She was going to swastika him as well, and she resisted that.
She resisted that, yeah. That would be the ultimate comeuppance. But she wouldn't go down to his level.
What about when people, and Sally and you guys will get to your question as well, unless you want to interrupt, because I'm happy as well for
We can
interaction.
take live questions.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that as well. Does anyone have one off the top of their head, or do you think about it a little bit?
I just have a comment.
Let's go.
Just on what you were just saying about the number of characters.
Right.
I enjoyed the way you told the story from different people. So I've read the book and I've started the second book, and I was pleased to see you're still doing it. So I like the difference from different people, not just one character all the way through and what they said. I think that's made it really interesting.
Thank you.
No question.
But a good comment.
I like writing different characters because I think you can't describe other situations unless you put a character there. You know, Hartmut, going into Hartmut's head and seeing it from his point
And
of
it's
view.
enjoyable because I don't know if they're good or they're bad. They're evil or whatever. So it's open to that through the book. It's good.
Thanks.
I too found the character studies to be the best part of the book, and it was very interesting to watch characters that you knew were going to end up being the bad guys, or you had a sense of it because of their behavior with other people. And, that was really well done to give you that clue without giving you too much information to take away from the mystery.
Thank you.
Also, another question, Dee. But it's all right. And I see a question came in. Will you be? There's two questions coming. One that you basically just answered. How you keep everything straight while writing. That's the butcher paper answer, right? And someone actually asked, will you be moving on to Euros with the books?
The next book, which comes out on June 2nd,
June
4th, we've only moved 1 month ahead. We're in 1999. The baby has learned to take a step. So we're moving increment. The next one will probably be at the beginning of November, 99. So the baby's
Are they all
very tight. Well, now that we're getting close to the millennium, I'm very close. So we have the baby growing. And if you remember the millennium, there was a great fear. We were going to have a computer meltdown and everything. So, but we didn't go to the Euro until 2001, 2002. But I like being in this time. I like her having to deal, as a young mother, she's got a detective agency to run. She's got to deal with Renee, who's getting super cranky in the next book, her partner, in business, because he feels she's not pulling her weight. She's got her American mother who makes an appearance, and that's all mysterious. CIA rogue. Yeah, rogue CIA, is she or isn't she? And then the man in her life, the biological father of Chloe, and she's trying to run an agency, get sleep, and make sure her baby's safe, and like she earns the baguette, she has to butter it too, and keep alive. So I think that's a super great challenge to continue with her. It's what I see my friend who has a young child doing in Paris. She has this huge job, she has this, but then she's got to run off and pick up her daughter from ballet because that's life, and then and then do all these jobs. So you're in Paris and she wears heels. So I just love that, and that's a new way to challenge, to freshen my series too. 19 books, it's to bring it alive and not. I don't want to write a formulaic story. Okay, there's always a murder because we start murder in.
Sure.
So I always have the murder up front because let's get it over. It's there, but it's to be alive. Paris survives because it's alive. It's changed in 20 years since I've been coming here.
Sure.
And like this place, they never had a cafe terrace here before, and so it's.
Do you think they're ducking into the gold to build these kind
That's
of...
what Lena suggested.
Yeah.
They're financing it with the gold.
I had a question that was more specific about Murder in the Marais and the scenes that you'd written there, like Square Georges Caron, where we filmed earlier this week. Like, when you were writing that, did you research that and find actual entries to the catacombs, or is that more of a sort of free license as a writer?
That's a free license as a writer,
Yeah.
because when I was writing this book, I had no email, I didn't even have a computer, and when I wrote, I had to write letters to people. The Jewish Center was not where it is now, it was over there. So there were a lot of things that were very inaccessible or not so well known, and I just had been in the Square Georges Caron, and I loved it, and it was just this oasis of peace, and it was sort of like the École des Beaux-Arts, you know, all the sculptures are left around, and I was like, this is where he would find her,
Right.
and this is where it would be, and you know, I thought that would fit.
It's kind of nice how Paris doesn't change. A lot of Paris doesn't change so much. So even when you and I were in there a week ago, it probably didn't change much from 20 years ago or from 60 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of the magic.
And then to walk around the Place des Vosges at night, which is what they do in the book, it has so much history there. I mean, it's just oozes history, especially at night, that cold November night. You know, and you feel the ghosts, you feel the spirits, or who's lived there before, and that's just so evocative. And actually, George Simenon, who wrote the Inspector Maigret novels, he lived there for a while. And I thought, yeah, you know, just something you absorb, and it's imbued with history.
So when you're writing, like, let's say that Place des Vosges scenes, and even in the new books, do you go into the Victor Hugo Museum? Do you go in and say, hey, I'm writing a book, show me behind the scenes? Or do you just go in there and do you sort of put yourself in your character's shoes? Like, try and sneak in with some tourists and just see how you go? Or are you like really open about who you are?
I'm not open at all. I'm sneaky Petey. I just sneak right in, and when they're not looking, I go behind a door and I tell story. Actually, do I have time to tell the story about the bathroom in the Victor Hugo?
You absolutely have time.
So I wrote the book, and then I wrote this scene where Aimee Leduc is in the bathroom of the Victor Hugo Museum and trying to get out of the skylight.
Everyone's read it.
Okay, so that scene, right? So I went back, my son was 7 years old. We went to the Victor Hugo, we went on top to the bathroom, which is at the top, and I said, Mommy has to check something, okay? He goes, all right. So he stood outside. It was just a room with a toilet. And I went in and I looked at the skylight, and of course it wasn't as I remembered it, because there were bars across it. And I was like, how is Aimee Leduc going to get out of this? I've already written this. And I'm like, what can I do? And I was freaking out. So then there was like an old wine box. So I closed the toilet, I put the wine box on the toilet, and then I stood on it, and I thought, well, could she reach? And then I thought, well, of course she could, because she has 3-inch heels. So she could stand on that, do that, and then a policeman told me that because a lot of burglaries are done through the skylights, and then people put bars, but the bars get old and rusty, very famous. And so when the robbers come, the burglars, they know that, so they open it and they have tools and they can push it and shove it. So then I stood there and I actually aimed. I could have kicked up with heels out the skylight bar and get out. So I was like, perfect, okay, done. And my son is pounding on the door. Mommy, the guard is saying, what are you doing? Let's go. And he was crying, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, but I had to check.
Meanwhile, you were on the rooftops 500 meters away.
Yeah. And the guard was so mad, he goes, I'm never coming to a museum with you again.
That's great. That was a very vivid scene in the book, so that makes sense to me.
Road tested. You know,
Yeah.
I told you that I test everything out.
What I want to ask you, there's a question. There's a few questions, and then I don't know how long this has been going for, but anyone got the time? Oh no, I've got the time. Okay, cool. There was a question from Maria Trenzado, who has a home in the neighborhood, I happen to know.
Ooh.
And she says, really enjoyed your book. I'm interested in knowing how you incorporate a new character in a distinctively different storyline and scene with the same chapter, or in your case, date and time of the day.
Oh, does she have a specific?
Do you have a specific Maria, or maybe we can how you incorporate new characters in such distinctively different storylines? Or maybe you can just talk about bringing in new characters in new books. Does that jumble things up?
No, and I can talk about the Marais because we're in Aimee Leduc's viewpoint, third person. We go into Hartmut's viewpoint because there was no way Aimee would know Hartmut's story. So he needed to be a point of view character. Then we go into Sarah's point of view, because it's only vivid if we hear it in Sarah's, through Sarah. And because a lot of times when people start writing, there's all this flashback. We have all this past history that just kind of drags the story down. So I learned, and I felt it was more effective as opposed to telling this backstory, to have it seen through that character's point of view. So instead of telling Hartmut's backstory, we're in his head, and we're seeing it. He's coming into Paris after 50 years, and his heart is thumping because the only memories he has is of the woman he loved, and he's afraid of being recognized, even though he's had plastic surgery. And all this brings up, he was a young man in love in Paris, and it was the wrong person, and it was all, but that's the haunting. So I think when you go into that person's head and viewpoint, it's much more vivid than giving a whole backstory.
Do you talk about this book very much, Murder in the Marais, these days?
People always ask me about it.
Yeah,
sure. And I usually tell the story about coming here, because that's why I started writing. But I like to talk about, I have 18 other books too, but it's a very special story.
They're the next 18 months of this book club,
You guys will be experts. You can help me.
Deborah Ball in Virginia wants to know if you ever scrambled across the rooftops yourself.
I have.
You have?
Not in heels, though. Not in heels.
Where did you do that, or am I asking too much?
I cannot reveal my sources.
There's comments in here that we can
I go down in the quarries, too. I've literally squeezed through tunnels in the quarries in this old nightclub down there. I do it.
I'm scared of doing that.
Why?
Going down into the catacombs and stuff. I don't know. I've seen videos of where it gets so claustrophobic and you have to crawl through.
Yeah, you do.
I've heard stories about how they can shut you in. People can shut you in so you can't get back out again.
Well, that's if you don't have the right friends. Yeah.
Well, we've covered that in this show many times. I don't have any of the right friends. There are comments in here which we can go through later that aren't questions. People complimenting you on your descriptions and so on. They're lovely. And someone's pointed out there's another off topic, but there's another secret park in the Marais, Square Saint-Gilles or the Grand Veneur. So we'll check that out for the next video maybe. But what I thought we'd do, because this is meant to be a half-hour video, is we'll sort of end on a question, and then we'll sort of chat amongst the crowd here a little bit. You said your goal was to get through the rest of the arrondissements, meaning there was the 15th left.
Actually, I made a mistake, which Meredith Mullins, the photographer here, pointed out. I said 2 in the 4th arrondissement. Ile Saint-Louis and Murder in the Marais are both in the 4th. So I've done that twice. So I have the 15th arrondissement, which I'm working on now. I'm here for, and then I have the 19th arrondissement. So actually I have 21 to do.
So then my question is that last one, the 19th, going to be the last of Aimee that we see? Okay. What are we going to see more?
There's, if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
You've already figured out how you're going to do that.
Yeah, I did. I had a perfect way to dispose of his body. He's a big guy, right? So, okay. I've been thinking a lot about that, actually.
By the way, we're referring to the podcast episode that came out on Monday. I'm sure everyone's listened to that, all right? But if you haven't.
Well, someone was saying to me last night, you haven't done the banlieue, the suburbs. I haven't done, I was down in Marseille last year. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved Marseille. And my God, that's the land of the French Connection. I could do, and I have a friend who lives there who kept saying, oh, you could do, So Marseille is beautiful and ripe for murder.
Well, there's a lot of crime. Well, they hate to say it because it's so beautiful, but there is crime there.
Yeah.
Because of the ports and a lot of drugs.
Right, and the gangs and the famous gangs.
So it could fit quite well.
Yeah, and there was a famous Corsican gang who ran Marseille. This is in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And then they used to run Pigalle here. The Corsican clubs were, the clubs in Pigalle were mainly run by a gang of Corsican family, which I didn't know until later. But yeah, they kind of ran Pigalle and parts of certain sections of Marseille. I think each band had their own part.
So the last question will be, imagine if, for some reason, unspecified reason, you had to finish Aimee Leduc's detective books in the last book in Paris, in the 19th. Would you kill her off?
Would I kill her off?
Yeah. Would you end with some big bang?
I don't know. I think instead of a bang like that, I think I would have her, as I didn't know I was writing a series, but she has grown and progressed, and she's also got her faults and her issues and being a mother, and I think her arc has been to, she'll need an arc, you know what I mean, character arc. We started somewhere, and now 6 years later, you know, which is like 20 books, it's only 6 years in her life, she'll be somewhere else. She'll have some realization, she'll have some growth as a person, or a faltering, or fall into addiction, or I don't
she'll
know.
be a preschool teacher maybe.
She does not have the patience to be a preacher. She doesn't cook. She has a nanny, but she loves her daughter. So I think with Morbier, you know, her godfather, the commissary, I think there's a big reveal in the next book. Ooh, big reveal, and I think there's going to be something with him.
Okay. Well, I think we can end the video there. The next book is Murder in Bel Air. June 4th, it's coming out. If you go on carablack.com, there's a bunch of information about and competitions that you can enter. We've talked about it already on the podcast and the videos.
And I'll be on book tour too.
Book tour as well. What's the details on that?
It's all on my website, and I'm like book touring in the States for like 3 weeks. So if you're in any of those places, love to meet you.
carablack.com, that's what you need to do. The video stopped playing here, but I'm just checking there's no comments that I need to address. And it's in the sun. Can you even see it?
No. Were there any questions?
Yeah, I was just trying to check it. I'm refreshing it. I'm on the Wi-Fi of the hotel here, so it's not exactly conducive to great conversation. But here's what we'll do. We can go back in and answer. You should join the book club and you can answer them personally. But I think we're going to wind up the video.